Hello everyone. Today is the lecture number 6 for the engineering economy. So if you haven't watched the videos for the last two classes, I just want to remind you that I merged the two videos in one package so that I only need to upload it once because the slow speed of Canvas, especially UJA, for uploading videos is really wasting a lot of time. So I just want to upload it once when it's very slow. Okay. And today we're going to talk about chapter number 3, cost estimation techniques. Well, before that, we have an announcement about the class schedule next week. So, class does not meet next Monday because it's a holiday, and we will resume on next Wednesday. Okay. So I hope everyone can have a good rest and a very relaxing holiday. Well, before we start chapter number 3, here is the assignment for homework number 1. Okay, many of you have asked about the class schedule in the syllabus, indicating that homework number 1 will be due on September 2nd. That timeline was set up before the semester begins. So it's a just tentative schedule, and because of many issues with the Canvas and UJA, and also dynamic arrangement of the university. So my class plan has to become very dynamic, which means it's hard to stick with the original schedule. So if you have checked the syllabus again, you can see that I have already modified the schedule a little bit based on our current pace. So now the homework number 1 will be due on September 9th, so after the holiday on Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. And the way you do that is you just go to Canvas and you go to assignments, you will see the homework, or you can go to your quizzes, you will see the homework number 1. Although the homework is listed in the quizzes, but it's not a quiz, okay? It's just in the same format of a quiz because it's online. Okay, so in Canvas, all the online assignments is under the quizzes, the section quizzes, okay? So don't worry about that. And if you do the online homework, of course you will finish all the questions and then you submit. But here you can submit as many times as you can or as you want until the due time. So you have plenty opportunities to fix your errors and then resubmit, and then until you get the grades you're happy with. The total points of this homework is 100 points. Okay, and so you can submit it as many times as you want until the due time. Due time is September 9th, 11:59 p.m. So at that time, I will close the submission. And after each submission, you will see your score so that you can decide if you want to do it again, okay? well, if you submit several times, the highest score will be kept as the final score. So you don't have to worry if your second try is lower graded than the first try, because the highest score will be captured. And you can only see the correct answers after the due time, of course, right? So before the due time, you only know like which problem is wrong, but you don't know what is the correct answer. You have to work out by yourself. So that's how we deliver the homework, and the other homework assignments will be delivered in the same way. Okay? Now let's start our chapter number 3, cost estimation techniques. Let's just spend a few minutes to recall what we have learned in chapter number 2. Okay, so chapter number 2, we learned a lot of economic language, the terms, right, terminologies. And we also learn different types of costs, right? Fixed costs, variable costs, direct costs, indirect costs. And in the end of chapter number 2, we've seen the example of how to calculate the total cost, the total profit, total revenue, maximum profit, maximum revenue, and optimal demand, right? And profitable range. So those are all based on one condition or some given conditions. You remember that? You always know what is the fixed costs, what is the variable costs. You know it already in the problem statement, right? So that's given in chapter number 2. But in reality, when you're running your own business, you have to estimate those fixed costs, variable costs by yourself. It's not always given, okay? To do that, to estimate the cost, you need to use some techniques. And this chapter is all about different techniques you can use, okay? So, chapter number 3 is just to teach you under what condition, what technique is the best to estimate the cost. And then you can use that cost number in example like in chapter number 2 to calculate your profit. Okay, so here is a chart of the home price and the building cost of median homes in California coast, on California coast. Okay, so the chart is very interesting. On the vertical axis, it's the year. So we have year from 1985 to 2013. Okay, and we also in the vertical. Oh, so sorry. This is horizontal axis. So horizontal axis is the year, and the vertical axis is the price or the cost. Okay. So US dollars for the vertical axis. And there are 2 lines in this chart. One line is the dotted line. The dotted line is the California coast building cost. Okay. And the another line above it, the very bumpy line in solid black color, that's the California coast home price. So building cost you can tell that it's kind of stable, right? It almost looks like a straight line, although it's a little bit angled. Excuse me. Okay, now I'm back. Sorry, I have to turn down the TV's volume. Okay, my son is watching the cartoon. All right, so so the two lines are pretty different. The home price is bumpy along the different years. So you can tell that in the year maybe 1989, it's a peak for the home price, and then in 1996 it's a bottom. And then in 2005 or 6, it's another higher peak. Okay, and then during the year between 2008 to 2012, it's another bottom again. We all know what happened during this time period, right? It's a crisis, economic crisis. So the market goes down and the home price goes down because nobody wants to spend money on buying a house, which makes sense. So the home price is really sensitive, and it's going up and down very greatly. But on the other hand, the building cost stays almost the same. It's very stable, right? So which means the cost of a building hasn't changed so much. So the materials and the labor cost are not changed along with the market that much. It's a comparison between the home price and the building cost. Okay, so which means compared to the home price change, the building cost is not changing that much. And so right now, if I want you to estimate the home price in the year of 2015, which line do you think is easier to use? Do you think the home price is easier to estimate, or the building cost is easier to estimate? I would say it's hard to predict accurately the home price because we don't know, because it's too sensitive to the market change, right? And nobody can predict the market that accurately. So we're not sure if the solid black line, is going to go down or go up in the next few years, right? So that's questionable and it's hard to predict. But if I ask you to predict the building cost of a California coast house, that seems an easier job because we can tell it's very stable. So we can, we can say, okay, pretty much it's going up like that, right? Just keep the angle the same. And then you can just draw a line from the dotted line and then find the year 2015. Okay, and then this price is gonna be your estimated building cost. So this is just one way for you to estimate the cost of something. You can use the historical data and plot them on a chart and see the trend. If the trend is very stable and predictable, of course, based on your experience, right? And then you can use this kind of method to extrapolate the line and then got to the estimation. But if in case that trend is not predictable, it's bumpy like the home price, then this is not a good method for you. Okay, so this is just an example to tell you, okay, for one method, it has some conditions that it will work, but under another condition, it won't work. So you have to choose the right method. And in this chapter, we're going to learn many different methods. Before that, we want to explain why cost estimating is important, because we need some motivation to learn chapter 3, right? We know we will learn a lot of techniques and a lot of calculation. So it's tough. So we need a good motivation. So why we need to do all of this? Because it's very important. First, as what we said, it will provide the cost figures for examples like in chapter 2. You need to have the costs given so that you can estimate your profit, your revenue, and your profitable range. Okay. And second, it will provide cost estimates for future years, right? So that they can be converted into present or future or annual costs for comparison between different options. So, and all of this is about chapter 4, is chapter 4 about. Okay, so you can see the cost estimating as building blocks for chapter 4. Without this cost numbers, we're not going to compare different options, different business plans. And number 3, an economic analysis is only as good as the data used to describe the project or design cost and benefit. Remember that when we decide which business plan or which option to go with, we always want to quantify the cost and benefit for each of them, right? And we want to go with the one with the least cost with the most benefit. But without the good cost estimate, your comparison and your selection is not guaranteed to be the wise one, which means garbage in, garbage out. Thus, we need to learn these techniques to estimate the cost numbers. And cost estimating, by definition, is the process used to predict the present and future financial consequences, like incomes and expenses of a project. And the process used to generate a cash flow diagram. And cash flow diagram is something very important in this class and will be introduced in chapter 4 and 5. But here, what we learn is just components for the cost for the cash flow diagram, because you really need that cost numbers. And so now let's talk about the approaches or the techniques for cost estimating. We have two fundamental approaches here. Fundamental means they are all the basic methods, okay? And built upon these two, we were going to have a more detailed or more dedicated techniques. So the two fundamental approaches are top-down or bottom-up. That's the two the names of the two approaches. What is top-down method? So top-down method is when you want to estimate the cost of something. You first you are gonna collect a bunch of historical data, like a historical cost of that item or that type of project for the similar project or item, and then you want to modify that cost data with time and activity level. Okay, so maybe you have the cost of the house 2 years ago, and then you consider the market change, the interest rate, and then you say, okay, I guess I estimate that there will be 3% increase in the price. So the current price might be the price 2 years ago times 1 plus that 3%. Okay, so that's how you estimate. You estimate based on the historical information, and you modify that with the time and activity level. This type of estimation is very broad and very general without much details. So usually it's not very accurate. It just used to give you a bigger picture of like the scale of the cost. Okay, is it gonna be a 1,000 thing, or is it gonna be a 10,000 thing? It's just giving you a scale. And the second approach is called bottom up. And bottom up approach is to break down one project into small units, and you estimate each single unit just like in this graph. Okay, so you break down this into different parts, and then you estimate the cost for each part, and then you sum them up. So this approach will give you much more details than the first one, because every estimate is only for a small part, so it's more accurate, but it's more time consuming, right? Because you have to break it down, and then you have to estimate several times, several items, and then you sum it up. So while the two approaches both have their pros and the cons, it depends on like what type of project cost estimation you're doing. Okay, now let's take a look at an example. So now we want to estimate your college cost for the next school year. Think about that. How would you do that? Okay, so if I want to do that, I may just go ask my roommate. Okay, so maybe my roommate is a year senior than me. I'll just ask her like, hey, I'm a freshman, so I want to know what's the cost for school year. Do you know your cost for your last semester? And then maybe she will tell me, okay, my cost is like 15,000 last year in total. And I would say, okay, so I would think like if we have the same type of costs, like okay, we're in the same school, the same college, and we both dining on campus, we both live on campus, and we both don't have cars, so our spending structure or expense structure is pretty much the same. So I would say, okay, for me, maybe my next school year will be pretty much the same. It's 15,000. Well, to be more accurate, I may want to add or consider the interest rate for the inflation, right? So maybe it's 1% inflation rate. So my budget for the next school year is gonna be 15,000 times 1 plus that 1% inflation rate. So this type of estimate is called top down, because I just use the historical data I get from my roommate, and I compare our school life, and I figure out it's pretty much the same. So I can safely use her data, but I also modify that data with the inflation rate. Okay, so that's exactly what top-down approach is. And here, in this example, what I listed here is the same as what I just described. So first step, you're gonna get a historical data from someone else, from internet maybe. So average annual cost for last school year was 15,750. Maybe that's the number for yourself. If you are not a freshman, you already have a historical data for yourself, right? And second, this amount includes tuition, the fees, university housing, and the weekly meal plan. So you want to make sure the structure of the fee is the same. And third, you need to modify that based on recent past increases. This given amount is likely to, maybe you think it's going to increase at 6% annually. So your next school year's cost is gonna be 15,750 times 1 plus that 6% increase. The second approach is bottom-up approach. So the first thing is you have to break down your school year cost into, I broke it down into these 3 parts. So tuition and fees, housing and dining, and other indirect costs like the books, supplies, loan fees, transportation, personal, and other expenses. Okay. And for each part, you are gonna have 3 scenarios. The 3 scenarios is if you live on campus, if you are off campus, if you are with your parents. That will change the fee for each part a little bit, especially the housing and dining, right? And then for next school year, you're going to estimate each of these costs based on the historical data. Okay, and then you're gonna add it up again. Let's say, so this is the data for previous school year, and for the next school year, you may want to, well, the tuition, the fees stay the same. So you want to use the data 58,540, because you might have same number of courses, so you can use this data, this cost directly. If you are going to have lower course load, this cost might be lower. And the second part is housing and dining. Well, maybe you decide that you don't want to stay on campus or live on campus for the next school year. You want to, rent a place, so that the number you're going to use is this number. So it's gonna be 8,700. And then for the other indirect costs, they are pretty much the same. Okay, so maybe you decide to buy a car, so your transportation cost is gonna be higher, right? And then the total number is going to be higher as well. So let's say maybe that car is a second-hand car, and the cost could be, second-hand maybe 10,000. So your cost is gonna be plus 10,000. Okay, so it's gonna be 4,476. And you wanna sum this up together, and then you maybe give it an increase rate, like 6%. That's gonna be your total cost of the next school year. Okay, but this method will give you some details of the cost structure, and for each cost part, you can have a better estimate, right? You can consider if you want to live on campus or if you want to buy a car, and you reflect that change in this. Okay, so this is the two approaches, top down and bottom up. And there are three components in estimating the cost. Okay, so and the first component, because we said these two approaches, top down and bottom up, they just give you a rough estimate. Sometimes they're not enough for the serious economic comparison. So we need some accurate estimating techniques, and this type of accurate estimating technique is an integration of different components. The first component is called work breakdown structure. Okay, so WBS, work breakdown structure. This method will help you to break down a complicated project into different levels. So every layer or every row is a level, okay, into different levels. And for each level, you have different rows, okay, rows. And after this method, you're going to have a clear map of your project. Like on the top level, what the project is, and how do you break the project work? How do you break the output down into three different types? And then for each type of output, you can have multiple sub-outputs or sub-activities, so that for each box, you can have a good estimate of the cost of that activity or that output. And then you sum them up to have a good, accurate estimating for the total cost of the project. While this might be very abstract to understand, but just bear with me, we can see the details in the next slide, okay? But before that, let's go over some rules for building or developing such WBS, okay? So first thing is 100 rule, 100% rule, which means if you want to break down this 100% project into 3 parts, the sum of these 3 parts, 1, 2, 3, should be that 100%. So maybe your first part of work will deliver the output by 10%, and the second part maybe it's 40% product, and the third part is 50%. So that the sum of them is 100% of the project. Okay, and again, you want to break down this box into 2 different types of sub outputs or sub activities. And then the sum of these 2 must be what? Must be 10%. Okay, so maybe the first green box is 5% of that 10%, and the second is the other 5% of that 10%. Okay, so each box means a type of activity or a type of output. And the second rule is mutually exclusive elements. So all the different boxes, they represent different tasks or outputs, right? But you don't want to have exact same outputs or the same activity in different boxes. You don't want to have overlaps. You want them to be exclusive, okay? And the third is plan outcomes, not actions. So usually, we will confuse outcomes and actions. And here, in this each boxes, the element should be outcome oriented. Like, what's the deliverables you want to have? Do you want to have a wall built? Okay, so building a wall is your outcome. And the fourth rule is includes both functional and physical work elements. So sometimes you only focus on doing the physical work, like to build something, construct something. Excuse me. Okay. Sorry about the interruption. Okay. So the last rule is the elements should include both functional and physical work elements. So functional work elements means the administrative work elements. Like you not only need to have workers to do the job, you need to have somebody to manage the whole project. Okay, so that management and accounting service, that kind of task is also you need to consider in the breakdown method. So let's take a look at this example. Now our project, like the top level output is to construct a house. That's our output, okay? So to do that, that's 100% of the work. And we want to estimate the budget, but right now we don't know that, okay? This is just the final number we put up there, but at the beginning you don't know. And then you want to break it down into the first level. First level, you have 3 components. One is the internal construction. The second is the foundation, and the third is external, right? If we want to build a house, that's the three components, right? They are exclusive. And the work for internal will be 45.6%. The work for the foundation will be 24%. And the work for the external construction will be 30.4%. And if you want to sum them up, it will be 100% for sure, right? It's the 100% rule. And then, of course, you don't know the budget for these three components yet. That's something we want to estimate, okay? And then for internal construction, you can break it down into another 2 parts, okay? That's the level 2. So orange color labels are level 2. They're on the same levels, okay? So first, the internal work. First part is electrical work. So you want to hire electrical contractor to do the work, and the percentage of that work is 11.8%. And then you're gonna have plumbers coming in, okay? So that work is 33.8%. And these 2% sum up together will be the 45.6% for sure, okay? And then for the foundation work, you can also break it down into 2 parts. One is excavate, and the other is steel erection. And they will share the 24%, okay? So 18.2% for excavate, and another 5.8% for the steel erection. And for the external work, you can also break it down into 2 parts. One is the masonry work, the other is the building finishes. And also the sum of these two components is the 30.4%. Okay, but all the budget number is the thing we need to estimate. Okay, so usually we will estimate the lowest level, like the level 2 components, because that's in detail, and you might have good estimate for the historical data. So you want to estimate using our the techniques we're going to learn in this chapter. Okay, you want to estimate the cost for plumbing, cost for electrical, and then you sum them together, and then you will get the cost for the internal part. And then you estimate the cost for excavation, the cost for steel erection, and then you sum them together, you will get the cost for the foundation work. The same thing, you want to estimate the masonry work and the building finishes, and then you sum them together to get this external cost, right? And when you have the internal cost, the foundation cost, and the external cost, you add them up together, you will have the total cost of this project. That's how you use the cost estimating technique. And how do you estimate the total cost? Okay, so pretty much it's a bottom-up approach. So here I want you to read the textbook to have a better idea of this of the top down and bottom up approach, and also about the work breakdown structure. Okay, and so the content is on page 62 to page 73. Please just read through, and then we will have some questions to test how well you get the knowledge from these several pages. We will include those questions in the homework number 2. Okay, that's the reading assignment. Of course, if you just want to watch the video and use the slides, you still can do the homework number 2, but you might lose some scores, because in the textbook there are some details about what I have introduced, and those details will help you to understand the method, the cost estimating method better. So I encourage you to read the textbook. Alright, so we said that to estimate the total cost, we integrate 3 components so that we can estimate accurately, right? So the first thing is you break down your whole project into levels and components. And then for each component, you want to consider what's the cost and what's the revenue. And for costs, you have different parts of cost you want to consider. Okay, and this list will tell you what are the typical list of cost and revenue you want to consider and you want to estimate. So the first item is capital investment. So that's the total input of total investment of a project. Okay, let's say if the government wants to spend 2 million on building a sidewalk, that 2 million is the capital investment. And second, what is the labor costs? So the workers you're going to use, the labor cost could be long-term, which will be fixed costs, or you want to hire some temporary workers, and that cost will be variable cost, right? And third, the material costs. So material costs will change along with what the productivity level. So it's gonna be variable costs. And fourth, what's the maintenance costs? Usually after you build something, you need to maintain it. You need to consider the whole life cycle of that project. until that structure is disposed. So maintenance cost is also something you want to consider. 5 is the property taxes and insurance, right? You need to pay for the taxes, the property taxes, and you need to pay for the insurance. That's another type of cost. And 6 is overhead costs, or we say indirect costs. That's to cover the administrative service, the accounting service, the management type of service. And 7 is the disposal costs. Disposal costs is whenever you're done with that structure, like you build a bridge or you build a house, you build a machine, say that, and then after its life cycle, the machine is outdated, it's not useful anymore, you want to just dispose it. Well, you cannot just leave it on the street and wait until the garbage truck to take it, right? That machine is a big chunk of metal. You need to dispose it correctly. Okay, so there must be some location or some service for you to dispose it, and the payment for that type of disposal service is called disposal costs. Okay, you might need somebody from a metal recycle company who can recycle this machine. So you might contact them, and then they need to send people out to your site and get this machine and deliver that back to their firm. So that fee is covered by the disposal costs. And 8 is revenues based on sales. So yes, you do the project, on one hand you need to consider the costs, on the other hand you need to consider the revenue, right? And 9 is the quality costs. Quality cost is something happen in the quality control of your product. Okay, if you are producing cell phones, you might have for 100 cell phones you produce, you might have maybe one of them has flaws. Okay, and that's bad quality, right? So your quality, good quality rate is 99%, and 1% of your product is bad quality. So you want to first detect that bad quality stuff. You might have inspectors to randomly inspect your product and pick up the bad ones, so that you know what is the rate for you to have a bad quality cell phone. And second, right, so the payment for that inspector is included in the quality costs. And second, whenever you find the bad quality items, you want to improve your production line so that you can decrease that bad quality rate, right? So to improve your production line, that improvement needs money, and that money is covered by the quality costs as well. So quality cost is really something you need to consider. You're not just, produce something, you have to control the cost, and that control requires money. 10th is the market value. Well, market value is different than the disposal costs. Disposal cost means you want to throw it away, but you couldn't just throw it away for free. You need to pay somebody to pick it up. And market value is, well, maybe that machine is not useful for you, but it's still useful for other companies, right? Like a second-used car. The first owner might want a newer one or a better model, so that old car is not valuable for him. But still, it's a car. It still moves. So maybe as a student, you can buy it, so it's valuable for you. So the price you buy it is called market values or salvage value. That's the price you sell your old stuff to the second owner. Okay, so try to distinguish the disposal costs and the market values. Okay, they're different. And one more thing I want to point out is the changes in one cost may change other costs. So see, we have these different types of numbers. So sometimes the change in one item will cause the change in another item. They are interrelated. For example, the new material. So if you buy some new material, the material cost will be different, okay? But that also can change your disposal costs and quality costs. How? So if you change the material, maybe when you build the cell phone, the first generation, you use metal, okay? You use glasses for the screen. And then in the second generation cell phone you might use plastic. So the disposal cost for metal, glasses, and plastic is gonna be different. Maybe for plastic is cheaper, I don't know, but that will change the disposal cost, right? Just because you use a different material for your product, for your cell phone. And also it will change the quality costs. Maybe producing or molding the plastic is much easier than the metal and the glasses. So that your the good quality rate is higher for using plastic. Okay, so that's why we say changing materials can change disposal cost and quality costs. Well, this is very interesting. Okay, so this is component 2. And component 3 is finally our estimating techniques. Okay, so this is a list of the techniques we're going to learn in this chapter: indexing, power sizing, learning curve, regression. Don't worry if you couldn't understand the terms right now. It's just a name. But now let's give it a pause and think about the 3 components. Okay, so we integrate the 3 components together so that we can have an accurate estimate of the total cost of the project. So the first component is you can break down your complicated projects into different levels, into different components. Each component will deliver an outcome, and all the outcome summed together will be your total project. Remember that house building? Okay, you have the wall, you have the window, you have the interior, you have the exterior. Okay, so, but for each component, you want to have a good estimate of the cost. How do you have that? You need to consider what type of costs are there, what type of revenue are there, right? And to consider that, you have to use the component number 2, the list, to screen out, okay, have I considered the labor costs? Have I considered the material cost? What's the number of that? So for each elements listed here, you have to have a good estimate. And then it comes the question, how can I have a good estimate for the labor cost, for the material cost, right? How could you have that? Then you need to use these different techniques, like indexing, like power sizing, like regression. You need to determine based on the condition. All right. Next, so before we learn each technique, here are something else we need to discuss. Like, well, we always talk about we want to have an accurate estimate, but how accurate is enough, right? Sometimes maybe a rough estimate is enough. Like you are talking about the big business with another business owner. You don't want to go to the details. You might just want to have a big picture of, well, to build this community, maybe it's like 1 million-ish stuff, right? Compared to build a building, just a building, not a subdivision. Maybe it's like let me see, 500,000 ish thing. So at this level of discussion, you only need to have a rough estimate, right? You don't need to have that detailed estimates. But when you want to, compare, okay, what type of subcommittee is subdivision you want to build? Subdivision like a Cambridge, subdivision like a Lake Serene, right? Subdivision like a Trace. So you wanna, at that level, you want to have some detailed numbers, some level of accuracy. Okay. So the accuracy level depends on first time and effort available. Like how much time you have to estimate the cost, and how much effort you can put into that cost estimating. And also it depends on how difficult it is to estimate that item, right? And the third, it depends on the methods and techniques you use. And the fourth, it depends on the qualification of the estimators, which means who is estimating it. If it's an experienced estimator, then the accuracy might be relatively high. Okay, so the accuracy depends on different things. And the source of the data for estimation are, from different places. The first resource you can use is your company's accounting records. You can check the historical data, right? And you can ask your accountant for those records. And the second resource you can use is other sources within the firm. Like you can ask other experienced people, like if they have built something similar before, they might have a better knowledge about like what's the cost. The third source might be outside of the firm, like the other company, your competitors, or your brother company. They have the similar project done last year. You can just ask for help from them. And the fourth is the research and development, which means if that estimating is really important for you, you can set up a research and development team focusing on that estimation. Well, that's more expensive to do that, but if that estimate is super important, okay, you can do that. All right, so now let's take a look at the first estimating technique, indexes. It's called indexing or indexes. Both are fine, okay? And this estimating method is to estimate the cost of an item at one time given the cost at another time. So what you're given is for the same product, the price many years ago or many years later. It's just the historical data. And then you want to estimate the price or cost of that same item in another year. Okay? So that's when you want to use this method. And this method can be used at lower levels of the WBS, which means the very detailed components, the cost of the detailed components, or you can use it at the top level of a WBS to estimate the total project cost. So this method is very flexible. It can be used for detailed components. It can be used for total project. Okay? And here is the formula. So C is cost and N is year. okay, year end, like year 1999, year 2000, okay? And the other side of the equation, the C, is still the cost. The K is another year, like the given year. So if you know that the price or cost for the item in year K, so that's gonna be that year, okay? The year when you know the price or the cost. And here we have a ratio between two i's. We call it I bar because there's a bar above that I. So I is index and N is still the year N, okay? And the K is the year K. So basically the year, the cost in the year N, which is unknown, is what? Is the product of two things. One is the CK, that's the cost of the same item or same project in year K, and that cost is given. You know that. And that cost times a ratio between the two indices. The two indices is the index of the same product in the year N, which is the unknown year, and then over the index, the index of the same item in the year K, which is the year you're given the price or the cost. Okay, so that's the structure of this formula. And then let's take a look at this example. So we want to use the indexing method to estimate the cost of a new boiler. Okay, so now you have a new boiler. You might know the price of it or the cost of it many years ago. And then you know the index of this price in different years, and then you want to know like how much it's gonna cost for another, a year later, right? So let's read through this statement. A certain index for the cost of purchasing and installing utility boiler is keyed to 1988. What does it mean to key it to 1988? Which means in 1988 the price is the baseline, is the base. So all the other years are comparing with this baseline, okay? And for the baseline, we always set the index as 100, okay? And company XYZ installed a 50,000 pound per hour boiler. So this is a model of that boiler. And for what price? For 525,000 in year 2000. So we know the cost in 2000 for this boiler is what? Is 525,000. And when the index had a value of 468, so that's the index of which year? Of 2000, which is 468, right? That's given. And the same company must install another boiler of the same size, which means the model is still this model, right? The 550,000 pound per hour boiler. So same boiler, same model, but the price, the cost in 2014 is unknown. That's the cost you want to know. You want to estimate. So C, 2014, the cost is something you don't know. You want to estimate. But what you know is the index, the price index of this boiler in 2014 is what? Is 542. So which means the I 2014 is 542. Okay, so this is pretty much what's given and what's asked. Okay, so now let's go back to check this formula. We want to copy that here. So Cn is Ck, some cost you know, times a ratio which is the I bar N over I bar K, right? That's what the formula tells you. So let's put a bar on these two i's, okay, to make it consistent. Okay, how do we use this? Now we want to calculate C 2014. So our N is 2014, okay? And what is given, the cost is C 2000. So K is 2000. Okay? And then time the ratio I bar N. We said N is 2014. And over I bar K, we said K is 2000. Okay, so you just substitute the numbers 525,000 times I bar 2014 is 542. I bar 2000 is 468. Calculate this. And you're gonna have a price 608,013. So that's the price for this same boiler in the year 2014. Okay. So I think for this equation, the key is you need to know what is N and what is K. Okay. In this one, you might want to write it down like N is 2014 and the K is 2000. Okay, that's the year number. Okay, so you won't, you won't get this ratio wrong. All right. Okay, so today let's just have a taste of the first technique, and then in the next class we're going to learn all the other techniques. Okay, so I'll see you next Wednesday, and I hope everyone has